Welcome to this ECIST webinar, which is looking at the focus model, broad guiding principles for operational site management. This afternoon, I'm joined by my ECIST colleagues, Tim Gillett, Andy Aldridge, Kevin Reynard, and Rob Kemp, and we're going to run through the principles of the focus model. So at this point, I'm firstly going to hand over to my colleague, Rob Kemp. Over to you, Rob.
Good afternoon. The focus model is a set of principles. Predominantly, it's designed to develop insight and understanding of the whole site position. This can include things like staffing and constraints. It leads on to developing plans that are coordinated, and also it adds in actions, and these are ones that are tested and known and lead to de-escalation. Also, it links to the way sites and systems are escalated, so it links with the Opal system that you're used to working with. For the first stage, I'll just hand you over to Kevin.
So the front door positions the thing that underpins many site meetings. It's really important that we have an understanding of our capacity, demand, and the current rates across the whole of the front door of the hospital. So that's not just the emergency department, but also includes same-day emergency care, frailty, and assessment areas. We need to be taking this into, taking into consideration our current position on the day, what our current performances and current activity levels in each of those areas. And we need to be comparing this about what we know about what we're normally like. So we have to have locally defined triggers to help us so we understand what we need to do. Many hospitals have internal professional standards with which they help guide how their whole hospital operates in response to emergency care flows. It's really important in your site meeting that you consider this and ask yourselves the question, are we meeting the standards we set of ourselves? And those goes through into even down to patient level performance of departments. So in our assessment areas and our emergency departments, are we assessing patients in a timely way so that we can manage them through the department in a time frame that meets our objectives? We specifically need to think that patients who are at really high risk of coming to harm within the pathway, and there's no group within the ED where this is has a more amplified effect than those patients who are approaching 12 hours. We need to make sure we have specific plans for those group of patients. Across all of our areas, we know that they work well when doctors and nurses are working well and coordinating their processes together. Do we know that this is happening across all of our areas and they're able to raise issues to our site meeting to enable us to support them in their jobs? And lastly, we need to remember that the front door extends beyond the hospital. We need to remember about the effects of keeping ambulances waiting to hand over in our department. So make sure that we pick this up at the site meeting. I'll hand on to Andy now.
Thank you, Kevin. So really important that the site management team have got a really good oversight of the whole hospital. Just picking up on one or two of the points there. So patients who are outlined in hospital, not an ideal situation, but we need to have a real good oversight of where our outlined patients are because they clearly have an increased risk. Staffing issues, again, really important that we understand where our staffing constraints are within the hospital and that we mitigate some of the risks around staffing. Jumping down a few then, if we've got unresolved delays within the hospital, it's critically important that the site management team understand those unresolved delays so that they can help in unpicking them. We need to understand our red day problems, as it were, including, importantly, complex discharge issues. Some of these can be unpicked quite easily by the site management team if they're aware of them. And we also need to be confirming that board rounds and ward rounds are happening on all wards so that we know we've got good timely flow taking place in the hospital. Moving on to the next slide then. Again, really important that we've got some challenge in the site management meetings. It needs to be appropriate challenge, but we need to be challenging what we're doing within the hospital. So is the capacity to assess patients in the same place as the demand currently? If it's not, we need to do something about that so that we're able to marry the two up. Are patients on the right pathway, or could they be managed using an alternative pathway? Again, the site management team are experienced and skilled in managing some of these issues around pathways and can point patients in the right direction so that they're managed more appropriately, and it's a better pathway for the patient, most importantly. And can the patient be appropriately managed as a short stay patient, or do they require a specialty bed? You know, some of these patients who are initially identified for specialty beds, we can quite quickly turn around to, you know, maybe some of our SDEC areas so that they're managed within the day rather than taking up a bed overnight. Again, really important, it's better for the patient. I'll hand over to my colleague now, Tim Gillett.
Thanks, Andy. So one of the things we sometimes see, having observed site meetings in lots of different hospitals, is that some of the information is shared, but sometimes we don't come away with precise actions. So the site meetings can sometimes be accused of being a bit of a talking shop. The real benefit of site meetings, as I see it, is that we should really be having actions that go away, that people take away, that really have a massive impact on flow across the hospital and make a substantial difference. And that's where people will feel the value of coming together to a site meeting. So we're talking here about specific actions for individuals to take away. And equally then coming back to report to the next meeting, or if it's more time critical than that, reporting back to a senior person around whether those actions have happened. To do that, the meetings need to be taken seriously, and they need to have actions logged and circulated to people subsequent to the meetings, and reported back to the team. Agreeing the OPAL level, the operational pressures escalation level, is really crucial as well. And then having action cards that deal with that and things that, again, that people do as part of their day jobs or come out of their day jobs to do to relieve those issues. We think that should then generate a proper plan for the site that people are aware of. And that plan has got to be proactive. It's about having a plan for the next 2 hours, the next 8 hours, the following day, particularly going into the evening. Is there a plan that will ensure the safety of patients and the safety of the site through the evening, then through the night and up to the following morning? Having these plans properly documented and responsible colleagues for delivery, that's a 24-hour responsibility, and there should be somebody 24 hours taking responsibility for those actions. As I mentioned, the OPAL escalation level should trigger specific actions. This is also a time to consider the support of the wider system. Site meetings can often be focused on, of course, what's happening in the hospital, but there are times when colleagues externally can change the way they work to provide better flow, and particularly to reduce admissions or to increase the number of discharges or to expedite discharges. But again, having proper actions and priorly agreed actions in place mean that the conversations about who's going to do what, rather than what the response should be at that time, the escalation card should deal with those kinds of issues. But of course, this is about empowering staff to deliver change and to take actions as close as possible to where the issues are. The use of SBAR can really help to communicate situations, the background, the assessment and recommendations. So the SBAR approach does give power to the people in the front line to be able to deliver the changes and to take the actions that are necessary. So really having a focus on actions and change that come out of the site meetings is absolutely crucial to their success and the safety of the site. Pete, back to you.
Okay, well, that was a brief oversight of the focus model based on our experience of running good site management processes. So just to finish off, guys, this is one of a series of webinars where we're going to be focusing on site management, and we'll be getting both the sites to talk, but maybe just the top tip from each of you around for anyone who's who's listening in to say, what's your top tip for site management? How about you first, Tim?
So I would say, Pete, that site management and flow across the organisation is a team sport, and people need to understand their responsibilities and what they can contribute to the situation and take responsibility for those actions.
Okay, thanks, Tim. And Andy, what's your top tip?
I think for me, Pete, it's important that the site management team have got a really good, accurate overview of the whole hospital, and that's an ongoing basis. So a really good overview, I think, from my perspective, really important.
Okay, and Kevin, your top tip?
So whilst challenge and actions are incredibly important, civility is just as important. So we need to make sure that whilst we're clear, we're also kind.
Yeah, I really like that one, Kevin. Thank you for that. And Rob?
My top tip, Pete, would be that the actions that are taken are those that are known to work, i.e. ones that are tested, and we know that lead to de-escalation.
Yeah, great. Okay, thanks, Rob. And my top tip, all of the above, especially the one about civility and being kind. A big one for me is just making sure every single patient in the hospital, wherever they may be, has a plan, and it's a plan that they and their loved ones know about. Okay, so that's it from us. We're going to be producing a few more of these webinars, and what we've done is we've put Andy and Tim's contact details if you'd like to know any more about focused principles. Thanks ever so much for listening.